What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. The first video of the official 2025-26 season, for me at least. Jumping right into a power rankings. I wanted to wait about a month before really getting into this series, just because I think it's a little unfair to judge teams on the first, 3, 6, 10 games they play in the season. So I wanted to get a good chunk of the way in here before I formulated this. I am going to relate it to the off-season power rankings that I did during the summer. So there's going to be some wild swings in here per se, but obviously it's movement from, my preseason predictions in essence to where teams are now as of the evening of November 5th before the November 5th game. So going to jump right into it, starting off with number 32. It's a team that I don't think has been at number 32, at least in the time that I've done the power rankings, and that's the Calgary Flames. Calgary cannot really score. Dustin Wolf has not been very good to start the year, just been struggling quite a bit across the board there. So not, I guess, that's surprising to have Calgary in 32, surprising that they're at this point in the season and still doing this poorly, but of course, a lot of season to go here. Number 31, another team that I would not have expected to have this slow down 15 spots from where I had them in the preseason rankings. That's the St. Louis Blues. St. Louis having pretty similar issues to Calgary, struggling to score, not nearly to the same extent, and their goaltending has been horrific, probably as a tandem, the worst tandem in the league to start the season. So very far off of the expectations that the Blues, I'm sure, had for themselves and that a lot of fans had for them, all the way down at number 31. At number 30, another Central Division team that had much higher expectations are the Minnesota Wild. I had them at 12 in my preseason ranking. I believe this is the second biggest drop of any team, 18 spots down from 12th to 30th. Same deal. They're getting absolutely carried in the games that they win by their big three, or really big two, of Kaprizov and Boldy at this point. Some bright spots. I mean, Zeev Williams looked all right to start the year. Brock Faber, alternatively, though, has not looked all that good. The goaltending, like St. Louis, has not been very good for them either. So we'll see if they're able to turn that around. But for now, a rough start to the season for Minnesota. Number 29, I actually have this as a one-position drop for this team, but it's the San Jose Sharks. I don't think the Sharks should be disappointed with the way the season started for them. They're just below 500 and have been pretty competitive in most of the games they played. The goaltending has just not quite been good enough for them. They're not scoring at a ridiculous pace by any means, but the young guys have looked pretty good for them. Of course, Macklin Celebrini, top 10 in even strength scoring, has been fantastic to start the year. We'll see if they can keep that trend up, kind of make more positive strides as the season goes along. At number 28, a team that maybe you expected to be this low. They have a 3-position jump. That's the Nashville Predators. They've not been really bad nor good to start the year. They've, again, been pretty much what you probably expected them to be this season. Saros has looked better to start the year, but still not great. Juuso continues to struggle. The offense continues to struggle. So again, probably what most people expected for this team coming into the season. At number 27, this was, again, this is the biggest drop of any team on this ranking. From 1 to 27 is the Florida Panthers. Admittedly, lots of injuries. I don't think anyone really expected them to come out of the gate super duper hot, but they have not looked very good. Again, I attribute a lot of this to injuries of their two best players, but nonetheless, the team has just not been performing to the expectation that most people probably had for them, even in spite of the injuries that they're dealing with. So Florida at number 27 for me, again, the biggest drop on this list. 26, another pretty big drop here for the Washington Capitals. They were at 11 in the preseason rankings, all the way down here at 26. The goaltending's been pretty good for them, which is kind of the expectation at this point. The scoring has not quite been there. I kind of predicted this in my Metro Division preview. There were a lot of, again, career highs in point scoring last year, and I did not necessarily anticipate that getting replicated. I don't know that I expect them to remain in this bottom row, but for now, the Caps very much struggling out of the gate. They look good in the games they win, but definitely not a high-octane offensive start for this squad. Number 25, and this is a team that is probably about where some people would have expected them. I actually had them lower in my preseason rankings, but it's Buffalo at number 25, jumping up 4 spots for me. They've been okay. Alex Lyon's been a pleasant surprise for them to start the year. UPL just came back earlier this week, I believe, and has only played, I think, the one game. But it'll be really interesting to see what happens with the goaltending in Buffalo. Of course, Devin Levi's still there. But Alex Lyon, has earned his right as the starting goalie so far this season. We'll see how UPL looks in the games coming up for him and whether that shakes things up at all. But for now, Alex Lyon has definitely been the bright spot of this team, and we'll see if they can continue to build on, the strong goaltending that he's given them. Again, Buffalo, a team that isn't really over nor underperforming expectations. They always have either really hot or a really poor start, so it's almost kind of nice to see them just treading along a 500. I don't know, for Buffalo fans, maybe that's just more frustrating. But again, about at expectation for the Buffalo Sabres. Number 24, this is a team that had a 6-position jump, and that is the Chicago Blackhawks. They've looked pretty good, probably a little bit better than most people would have expected for them. Spencer Knight has been unbelievable to start the season. I think he's at like 7.5 goals saved above expected already, which is amongst the league leaders in that statistic. Connor Bedard has looked really good. Frank Nazar has looked really good. Their young defense core has looked okay. Definitely, at least to this point, a good building block season for this team. We'll see if they can continue that over the course of the next 70 or so games. At number 23, a team that is a little bit lower probably than most people expected them to be, and that's the New York Rangers. This team's still struggling mightily at home. The goaltending's been pretty solid for them. The offense has been in the desert. It's really been tough for the Rangers. They look like they're still trying to kind of find an identity. Not that they really lost a bunch of key identity players, but losing, early in the season, last season, Jacob Trouba, Chris Kreider, Keandre Miller, bigger, more physical guys. So I think still trying to work through what they are as a team and who they are as a team. But I do kind of expect the Rangers to bounce back a little bit more and kind of improve as the season goes along here. Number 22, a team that I did not predict to do that well, but I actually had fairly high in my preseason rankings, was the Canucks. They have a 3-position drop from 19 to 22. Thatcher Demko has looked fantastic to start the year, and that's about it. I guess you can throw Kiefer Sherwood in here, who's got 9 goals and 0 assists to start the season, which was pretty funny. But aside from those two, I mean, the Canucks just have not really looked all that great. I think that center depth that I mentioned in my preseason video is going to become a problem for them. They just don't have a ton of offense. The defense outside Quinn Hughes and Philip Hronek is not all that great either. So we'll see what happens with the Canucks, but I don't really expect them to make any massive leaps beyond where they're at here. They might, fight into a playoff spot at certain points in the season, but I do not expect them to finish there based on the way that they've been playing, at least to this point. Number 21, I have the Ottawa Senators. The Sens have actually been doing a pretty good job putting pucks in the net, but they cannot keep pucks out of their own net. Levi Merilainen, who's only played a couple of games, and Linus Ullmark have been struggling quite badly to start the year. They're probably the other, if you were to pin 3 or 4 of the worst tandems in the NHL, it's Ottawa, it's Minnesota, it's St. Louis, and you probably have to throw San Jose in that mix too. But this is a team that was expected to have, a top 10, top 15 goaltending room going into the season. I don't think much of that was expected to be on Merilainen's shoulders. I think most of it on Ullmark's, as you'd expect, but he's just not looked that great to start the year. If he can pick it up, this team is going to be pretty good. Again, their offense has been clicking at a pretty good rate, but again, you have to be able to keep the puck out of the net to win games, and that's been a bit more of a struggle than I would have expected for Ottawa coming into the season. Number 20, another really, really big drop from the preseason rankings is the Edmonton Oilers. Similar story here. Some of their guys a little bit colder than you maybe would have expected. Evan Bouchard has not looked great to start the season. The goaltending, maybe predictively has not been that great to start the season either. But we've seen this from the Oilers before. I expect them to jump well back into the top quarter of this list over the course of the season. They will be a playoff team. I'm not overly concerned about them, despite the early struggles. Number 19. This is a team that had a 7-position climb. I don't necessarily expect them to stay here either. But the Islanders have looked, especially recently, okay. Matthew Schaefer has looked unbelievable to start the season. Ironically, the one thing that you'd expect to not have been a problem for this team has kind of been the problem. Dave Riddick has been the better of their 2 goalies. And when that is the name that's, ahead statistically of Ilya Sorokin, bit of a problem there for the Islanders. So we'll see if that changes. Again, lots of games left in the season for him to rebound, but it's not been a good start for Sorokin. The offense, supposedly, has actually looked quite good for the Islanders, which I don't think anyone really expected. And again, Matt Schaefer and their defense group has been kind of what you'd expect, with the exception of Matt Schaefer looking really, really good. Number 18, I had a little bit of trouble placing this team because lately they've looked a lot better, but they had a really, really poor start to the season, and that's the Tampa Bay Lightning. Vasilevsky doesn't quite look like himself, but he's not been bad either. Kucherov's had a pretty quiet start to the season. Their big guys have not quite been going at the rate that we would expect them to go at. So because of that, this team is going to struggle. They rely very heavily, despite their improved depth, on that top line to generate a lot of their offense. So while that line is not really clicking at the rate you'd expect, they're probably going to continue to struggle here in the East. A Metro team probably exceeding expectations by a little bit at number 17, and that's the Columbus Blue Jackets. I did not expect to see both Jet Greaves and Elvis Merzlikins in the top 10 in goals saved above expected to start the season, but that is where we are. Both of those guys have been really, really good for the Jackets. If they can continue that, this is a team that very well could make the playoffs in the East, especially considering some of the names that are outside of it for now, looking at Tampa, looking at the Senators, looking at the Rangers, at Washington and Florida, depending on what happens. Again, a lot of injuries involved there for the Panthers. But this team, if they can keep doing what they're doing, have a very, very good chance at making the playoffs again very early to be making a statement like that. But even if it's just one of them, getting stable goaltending is something that Columbus has not been able to do really since Bobrovsky left. So that would be a welcome change for the Blue Jackets. Number 16, creeping into the top half of the board, we have the Philadelphia Flyers, an 11 position jump from their preseason ranking. They have looked pretty good to start the year. Still a team that's going to struggle, I think, to score, but recently have been looking a little bit better. The addition of Trevor Zegras looks like a pretty good one. The addition of Dan Vladar, which I admittedly bashed in the offseason, has also looked like a pretty good one. We'll see whether or not that can maintain course for the full season, but for now it's been a decent start for Philadelphia. They've been competitive in most of their games, and it's been a pretty good start for them. At number 15, a 6-position drop for the Toronto Maple Leafs. This team, similar almost to the New York Rangers, just trying to find its identity. I think they'll still be fine, but they no longer have, I was listening to, I think it was TSN the other day. They don't have the game breakers, is what they referred to, like Marner, Matthews, and Nylander as. They only have 2 of those guys really now in Nylander and Matthews, and I think they're still trying to get used to just not being able to put out a powerhouse line at the end of a game to make up for lost ground. They're going to have to be more of a physical team with the pieces they brought in. Their goaltending has not been quite as good as it was last year, which I think is to be expected. They were kind of otherworldly last year, so the Leafs still trying to figure it out. I still think they'll be fine. I'm not overly concerned about Toronto. Number 14, a 1-position drop for the maybe most boring team in the league right now, the Los Angeles Kings. Pretty impressive win last night over the Winnipeg Jets, but all in all, have just kind of been what you'd expect them to be to start the season. Don't really have too much to say about this team. I'm curious to see where they go long term, just because of some of the teams that are over or underperforming, and see where they line up relative to Los Angeles. Number 13, one of those teams is the Seattle Kraken. Has had a really, really good start to the year. I believe they actually still lead the Pacific Division as of the 5th of November. Up 12 spots from where I had them in the preseason. Joey Decord has looked really good. They just look pretty strong as a unit. There's not 1 or 2 names on there that really stand out. I guess Brandon Montour's had a very good start to the year, but sparing him and Joey, there's not a bunch of, or any guys that are really jumping off the pages, having super, super strong starts to the year. Just good all-around team play from Seattle, and we'll see whether or not they're able to maintain that. I did have them, I believe, at 5th or 6th in my division preview, but I did not expect them to be in the playoff race by any means. I don't know that I expect them to be, given that we're only a month in, but it has been fun to see them finding some success early on. At number 12 here, down 7 spots from the preseason, was the Dallas Stars. Just off to a bit of a slow start altogether. They've already had some injury issues pop up. Looking at Rope Hintz, some of their bigger guys have struggled a little bit, and of course that defense core that we predicted could be an issue in the offseason has been a bit of an issue. Jake Ottinger off to a really, really good start. Casey DeSmith, who was very solid for them last year, has not had the best start, but of course you expect your franchise goalie to be just that. So like Toronto, not really worried about this Dallas team. I think they'll kind of round into things as the season moves along here. But for now, I do have them at number 12. At number 11, this is a team I definitely did not anticipate having as high as they are now, up 11 spots from their preseason ranking, is the Boston Bruins. This team's just been scrappy, like finding ways to win games that maybe they don't have business winning. I don't anticipate it continuing for a very long time, to be 100% honest. I mean, Swayman's looked good. Pasternak is not really producing at the rate he was expected to, so if that picks up, I could be wrong there, but they've just really been fighting through games and have been finding ways to win them, which I guess as a Bees fan is probably fun to watch, and it's impressive from an outside perspective, but I just don't know, in the limited amount that I've watched Boston, that I expect from what I've seen to have them continue this throughout, the next 2-3 months of the season as we get towards the Olympics break. Number 10, this is a team that I actually probably expected to have higher going into this. That's the Carolina Hurricanes. They've looked fine. Brandon Bussey's been a surprising bright spot for this team, but some of their bigger guys have been struggling. I mean, Sebastian Aho, who I admittedly drafted for fantasy, I think has 2 goals and 1 assist through the first 12, 13 games of the season, something like that. Just not quite enough production from him. Nick Ehlers has looked okay, but still doesn't quite look like that line is really hitting on what you'd expect them to be. Sebastian Aho has looked like Sebastian Aho. The production from him has never really been that high, so I don't know that we would expect too much to change there. But just kind of a little bit underwhelming from the expectation for Carolina. And we'll see whether or not they, bounce back to be what we expected them to be this regular season, which was probably a, cup favorite, cup contender type team. And right now they're more of a, they're not a bubble team, but they're definitely not the dominant force that you'd expect them to be to start the year. At number 9, another team with a really, really big jump to start the year is the Detroit Red Wings. Which is interesting because the goaltending from one of them has been pretty good. Cam Talbot's been solid. John Gibson to start the year struggling a little bit, but the offense for Detroit has been unbelievable. I mean, this team, I kind of ripped on their bottom half and their defense group, but they've looked really good to start off. And if, Cam Talbot can continue having the season he's been having and John Gibson can continue to improve, he has been better in his last handful of games. This is a team that could very well be fighting for a playoff spot, and I think I had them in 7th in the Atlantic Division, so could be well off on that again very early on here, but Detroit's looked really, really good to start the season, which is a pleasant surprise. Again, one of those teams that I think is just makes the league more entertaining when they are doing well. So happy to see Detroit having a good start here. A team that I'm admittedly less happy to see having a good start here as a Caps fan is the Pittsburgh Penguins, who are the biggest riser, I believe. Yep, biggest riser from the preseason rankings, up 24 spots from 32 to number 8. This team, Malkin and Sid have found the fountain of youth, I think 19 and 17 points respectively. Malkin tied for 2nd in the league in scoring. Crosby, I think tied for 1st in the league in goals. I mean, just completely out of nowhere. Tristan Jarry, I think through the first, 5 or 6 games he's played, is like 6 goals saved above expected. Artur Shilov's, I think another 5 goals saved above expected. So surprisingly, one of, if not the best goaltending tandems to start the year in the entire league, which I don't think anyone could have predicted. Whether or not they're able to continue this, I'm not overly confident that that'll be the case, but it's been interesting to say the least to see the Penguins kind of running through the league. I think as of now, they still sit atop the Metro Division, which is just wild. Maybe actually they might be behind New Jersey at this point, but it's been very, very fun to see Pittsburgh doing as well as they have, despite the fact that they're the biggest rivals of my team, which is down in the bottom row for now. Anyway, at number 7, a team a little bit lower than you might have expected them. It almost feels weird putting them at 7, considering how well they're playing. But it's Vegas. Vegas has looked really good to start the season. The only thing that's been an issue, if you want to call it that, for them is the goaltending, with Adin Hill getting hurt again, which I talked about in the preseason, both rankings and I believe the Pacific Division preview. They, of course, did make the addition of Carter Hart, who will not see game action until December. Whether or not he's a solution to their problem, TBD. But for now, that is kind of the one sore spot for Vegas, who's otherwise looked quite good to start the year. The drop of 4 spots is not so much a reflection of their play as it is a reflection of some other teams having had very strong starts to the year. One of those teams that I wanted to get on the hype train for preseason and just couldn't quite get myself to do it was Utah, and so far I've been proven wrong. Their big guys have all looked really, really good. The slowest of those might actually be JJ Peterka. Gunther's looked great. Cooley, Keller, Schmaltz has looked really good. Vejmelka's been great to start the season. So this team, the guys they need to do well if they want to push for the playoffs, have been doing very well. So we'll see whether they can keep that up. And if they can, this is a team that will probably pretty comfortably make the playoffs. But again, like I've said, for some other teams, a lot of season left, and they have to make sure they keep that ball rolling if that's going to be the case. Number 5, and this is another team that I was a little more on the train for, but I did not expect them to have the start they had. That's the Anaheim Ducks. The Ducks have looked really, really solid to start the season. It was funny. I almost kind of proved my own point by not jumping right into these power rankings in the first week, because a lot of people after week 1, were saying Lucas Dostal was having a rough start to the season. They were concerned about the goaltending room. Meanwhile, they're only, 3-4 games in. We get to this point in the season, which is only another 8 to 10 games in for the Ducks, and Lucas Dostal is now the number 1 goalie in the entire league in goals saved above expected, surpassing Hellebuck, Sorokin, you name it. He is the number 1 guy in the league after having a quote slow start, as a lot of people were calling it. So that is why I'm happy to wait on this a little bit. But nonetheless, Distal's been fantastic. Cutter Gauthier, I think after his hat trick last night, might lead the league in goals or be tied for the league in goals. Leo Carlson has looked like a monster. Jackson Lacombe has been eating up ice time and looked pretty good doing it. Jacob Trouba, I think, has like 8 points and no penalty minutes. Chris Kreider's looked really good. Like, everything about this team has looked solid to start. And the biggest question mark I had, which was the young defense, has not looked like a massive gaffe for them. So we'll see whether or not the Ducks can continue it. I would love for that to be the case. They're a fun, exciting young team to watch. We'll see whether or not they can keep it up. Number 4, another team that you probably expected to be higher up on this list. The New Jersey Devils have looked really good to start the season, despite some injury issues in net in the game that Nico Daws had to step in. He was actually probably their single best goaltending performance of the season to this point, sparing maybe that Jacob Markstrom game from the other night. This team all around looked really good. Jack looks great. Jesper Bratt a little bit slower on the production side, but he's looked pretty good. Same for Nico Hischier. The defense has been great. Luke Hughes looks good. Dougie Hamilton looks good. Everything's moving pretty well for the Devils. So not too much outside of the realm of expectation for them at number 4. At number 3, this team I expected to be good. I didn't think they'd be this good, but the Montreal Canadiens, they might be the most fun team to watch in the league right now. I mean, their young pieces have been going as you'd expect. Cole Caulfield is like an overtime goal scoring machine. His comments, or Trevor Zegras' comments for him before their game the other night, was pretty funny. But this team's just looked incredible. The one weak spot has been Sam Montembeault. That slack has been picked up by Jakub Dobeš, who's looked really, really good to start the season. The defense core looks pretty solid. I mean, this team so far has been quite good. Obviously a bit of a rough one the other night against Philadelphia, but aside from that, this team has been, one of the best teams in the entire league, which I don't think a lot of people saw coming. Number 2 and number 1, both of these teams you could kind of go interchangeably. I think Colorado, who I do have at 2, is actually number 1 in the standings right now, but if you look at their record, they have, I think, 4 or 5 overtime losses, so above NHL 500, but I think only a game or 2 above real 500. But because of all the overtime points, they're actually quite high in the standings. And then, of course, I have the Jets at number 1, so I'll just talk about both of these guys. Colorado, of course, offensively has looked really good. Natchez, McKinnon, Makar all having really good starts to the season. Defensively, it could use a little bit of work. Scott Wedgwood had a good first, 5-6 games, has cooled down a little bit there. Mackenzie Blackwood being back changes the dynamic there. I'm sure Wedgwood will get more game share than he would have otherwise had he not started the first 10-15 games of the season, or I guess 8 to 10 games of the season, and had the performances he did. But I do expect Blackwood to kind of filter himself back into that starting role and to pick up kind of where he left off last year. And then for the Jets, it's the same deal. Connor Hellebuck beside Lucas Distal has been the best goalie in the NHL. Eric Comrie's actually looked pretty good to start too, which is nice to help alleviate the load from Connor Hellebuck. The offenses look pretty good. Jonathan Taves, who I had some concerns about going in, has looked solid. He's not producing a ton, but he's looked pretty good. But the big guys there have been fantastic. Mark Scheifele off to a ridiculously hot start. Definitely making a name for himself for that Team Canada roster in February. And we'll see whether or not the Jets can keep it up. Admittedly, I did not predict them to be this hot coming into the season. I had them at 8, so they're up 7 spots. And we'll see, whether or not they can keep it up, or if it's just kind of the momentum they were riding from the end of last season, and whether or not that's going to last. So let me know what you guys think in the comments section down below. Now that we're back into the season, I'm going to try to be uploading a little bit more regularly and do some different content than I did last season. But let me know what you guys think about these rankings. Who do I have too high and too low? Leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe as well. It is free, and I will see you guys in the next one.